Hi, I'm Asma, and you're listening to the Purple Podcast.
All right. As part of our ongoing series around corporate innovation and the importance of failure, I have a wonderful guest lined up for us today. I'd like to introduce Asma Al Qaseer. Asma, you are a leading local Emirati woman who is a pioneer in investments, tech startups, the whole entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystem. So, firstly, thank you very much for joining us today. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Neil. When I first heard about this opportunity, this podcast, I thought, oh my God, here we go, another podcast. But when you mentioned the topic of failure, I thought this is definitely something that speaks to my heart. I've been, talking about this with a lot of people from friends, government entities, that this is a topic we should embrace as a culture, as a region, which I don't think is often done. So thank you for this beautiful opportunity.
No, that's great. And your thinking is very much aligned to us. And that part of the reason that we wanted to do this, because we believe that failure is really important. It's part of the learning process, and it is not spoken about enough. It is often, we feel, pushed
aside. Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is where we get a little bit personal, Asma. It's not to say you're a failure in any way, shape, or form, but this is to talk about failure as a concept for learning. And I think everyone along the journey of life in corporate and innovation has failure.
Absolutely.
So today, I would love to learn a little bit more about failure from your perspective.
I think there are multiple experiences. I think not one single journey that I went on didn't have some sort of level of failure. And I mean it in a positive way, because I feel all of these kind of situations that happen to us lead us to where we are today, right? I'll talk about a few instances where I feel it was a big learning curve in terms of failure. So a few years back, I tried to start a fund with an ex-colleague of mine. It was a growth stage fund. Shout out to Dana Levin. And we went on the market, started fundraising, and quickly realized that doing a growth stage fund, trying to raise $200 million as a first-time fund manager was becoming very difficult. The big learning curve for me there was, if you are to fail fast, learn from it, and move on. Don't hang on to it just because this is your baby, this is your idea, and regardless of, the economic situation, this was at the time of COVID as well. So you need to take all these considerations, all these factors into consideration. So learn, fail fast, and move on.
How are you? I'm interested. Just at which point did you think, no, this is not working? Like, what was the mechanics of the setup? Was it like meeting after meeting where you get?
I think it was with time, to be honest, and having an open communication with my partner, realizing that, this is taking longer than expected. It could be for many reasons. Again, economic, people have already put a lot of money in this asset class. And so it was to take that learning, take that lesson, which was a big lesson for us, and move on from it.
Yeah, I think that's really key, actually. And it's something that we don't do often enough.
Right.
Is we push
exactly.
things and we continue to, no, it'll work, it'll work.
Exactly.
And then sometimes you've got to know when to
move on
to
from
cut
it
and learn from it.
Absolutely. Another instance for me was when I was trying to build a startup with some partners. Actually, the culture was not embracing innovation and failure, right? Because when you embrace failure, you're actually opening up the doors to innovation. And, it was said to me over and over again where we cannot fail. And to have that as your motto, or to build a startup or innovate around that, is nearly impossible, right? You have to dive into the unknown. You have to be able to feel that you can think outside the box, to act outside the box.
I mean, I don't know any startup that has started with one concept or value proposition in mind and not had that challenged along the way. And
Absolutely.
then had to adjust.
Absolutely. You need to take from your learnings, adjust, whether it's a product, a service, the team itself, restructure, re-strategize, move on.
When you were confronted with that being told that we can't fail.
Right.
What was your feeling to that? Was it one of frustration? Was it one of acquiescence? Like, okay, this is the way it's done here, or how did you deal with that?
Good question. I think at the time, I really wanted to make it work. So I looked beyond what I actually was doing to the culture of the company, right? So I was still trying to see past it. But what it was actually doing was confining me completely in a box where you're trying to do things just because they have succeeded in the past.
Yeah.
And it's a track that someone else has probably taken and you know it might work. So you're definitely less risk averse. You're not taking any innovative solutions. You're not thinking outside the box. And you know, you set yourself up for failure, really.
The wrong kind of
the
failure.
wrong kind of failure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't want to know the name, but I assume that startup is no more, or what happened
To be honest,
it?
I don't know. I haven't touched base, so I'm not sure how that's doing.
Very good. Did you have any other failures that you'd like
I
to
would
talk about?
say no. I think those two were the biggest learning curves for me, for sure. The rest of the time was mainly predominantly spent in corporate or government sector. Of course, there were some challenges here and there, but again, I was working for someone. It wasn't my own venture.
Yeah. So when you were working on the startup world, did you find the environment, because the startup world is very kind of fast moving.
Right.
Do you think that kind of mindset is applicable to corporate innovation, to government innovation? Can you
Absolutely
transfer the same concepts?
Absolutely, yes. I you know, even as a government entity, when you try to adapt, even from a sheer size of a government entity, they're trying to adapt some, you know, innovative solutions. There are so many solutions on the market today, and for you to be relevant, for you to keep up, you need to be able to adapt quickly with the market and what they require.
I'm interested, as a local Emirati woman. You mentioned that failure as a concept is not spoken about in this region.
Right.
To date, that positively. Do you think that is changing? Do you foresee that as a change, or as a mechanism for change that will happen?
I think yes. I've been to a few events recently where I've heard founders speak about failure, right? Whether it's, we've filed this patent 60 times and we got it on the 70th, or, you know, this is my third time trying to launch a business. So I think it's being embraced definitely more now than it was before.
Right. Now, if you were to go back to Asma a few years ago, and you're in that role of trying to fundraise this $200 million tech fund, what would you say to yourself? What would be the things that you would sit down and say, right, here's some things you've got to know? Okay.
Enjoy the ride, because it had its ups, it had its downs, difficulties. But I think, you know, we've created great network. We had a great network of people that we met throughout the way. So for me, it wasn't all waste. It was definitely a huge experience.
So out of that failure, there's been so many, I assume, other things that have come out of that. Yeah.
From contacts, from business opportunities. It actually gave me an experience that I wasn't expecting.
Very good. And would you go back into the startup world?
I never say never. So that's a yes, I would.
Very good. Very good. So, Asma, I've loved hearing about the failures that you've gone through and you're learning around it so far. When you mentioned the startup fund and building that, and also the startup building itself, those are very kind of Asma-centric concepts. From a corporate innovation perspective and the concept of failure, how do you think that corporates can mitigate against failure? What do you think are the main things that they can focus on to not necessarily mitigate against failure, but try and promote good failure versus bad failure?
Yeah, I think you can take examples from massive companies as well, like Apple, right, which sits at the heart of innovation. One thing they've implemented was to have a culture that accepts failure. Right. And I think that is embedded in their DNA as a company. So I think the same applies for larger corporates or even small to medium sized corporates, is to have that embedded in your culture as a company, because again, you're mitigating complacency. You're mitigating people sticking to a specific route in terms of knowing what they do and not thinking outside of the box.
Yeah.
So I think culture is a huge, huge aspect of it.
I totally agree with you. I'm always struck by how fragile culture is, though,
Right.
as well. It's such a fine line
Yeah.
to be able to create something that promotes that.
Absolutely. And I ask my founder friends who have been, startup founders for many years and have reached Series B, Series C onwards to understand how they've managed to get the company where it is. And really, it goes back to culture.
Yeah.
And no politics, open door policy, checking in with the team every month to make sure that the culture is intact and everyone's aligned on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah. Great points. So, if I was to turn around to you and say, Asma, give me 3 things that you would focus on or make recommendations or provide learnings about from failure in innovation, what would those 3 things be?
I think the first one for me is, I think it's embedded in failure, which is embracing the unknown. This is something I've, taken as a motto recently. I've put it on my office, on my fridge. Because I think in human nature, we try to always, know our next step, know what's behind it. And we're very scared of the unknown. So to be able to kind of push the boundaries and embrace things, even though we don't know what's behind it, whether it's failure or success, just going into it and enjoying the ride, I think that's a huge one. That's definitely one of them for me. The second would be, I think, to surround yourself, Anil, with people who can not question, but challenge your thought process, right? You don't want people surrounding you who are just yes men.
Yep.
Because you'll feel like, oh, I know everything and this is great. Everything's a great idea. But you want people that can really push your thought process and tell you, no, I don't think that works.
It can be uncomfortable, that.
It can be, absolutely. But
Yeah.
you need people like that to grow. And you don't want to be the smartest person in the room, right? You'll never learn. So this is something, again, I learned from Dana, actually. Even when we're strategizing on the fund, she would always say, but why this?
Yeah.
Why that? So that would be number 2. The third one, I think, is to, honestly, to enjoy it, to have fun on the ride. It is scary. Taking a step into, building something, whether it's a startup, a fund, or a business, whatever it is, or even a new job, a corporate job, I think any of these steps is quite scary. And we always think of it and take it so seriously. And, oh my God, I have to act like in a certain way. I think we forget the fun of the whole journey. It's not about, they say it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And I truly believe in that.
That's great. That is wonderful advice. And I think
Thank
we'll
you.
leave it there for today.
Thank you so much.
Learned a lot from you, Asma. So thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Pleasure. My pleasure, Neil. Thank you so much. Thank you
And
for
I look
having
forward
me.
to seeing you on your next
Inshallah.
adventure.
Inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.